Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought we'd go over another data mine which came out a few days ago. Normally when it comes to the data mines, what happens with the dev server stuff is you get like kind of a final data mine before the patch is released. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be the one with the patch looking like it's going to come out this week, pretty much any day now when it comes to the general news. My guess will be either Tuesday or Thursday this week, but probably Thursday is more of a best bet. And this update, or the data mine from the dev server, is kind of interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, a lot of other unused assets as well, which we'll go through, which may hint towards vehicles we'll see in the future. As always, thank you to Zabby for putting this together. Make sure to show him your appreciation. It's always nice what Zabby does for this community. It is incredibly important that we have people like him, and it's always good to have them. Anyway, let's get into the data mine. The first part is mainly about the TU1. A new radar was added, which is the GNEYS-5S, and this is actually the radar that you find on the TU1. The TU1 is the strike aircraft that is coming to the Soviets as a premium in Update Direct Hit. It's looking pretty good. I did a dev server video on it if you want to check it out. It's going to be a GE premium that they're adding to the game. Now, the GNEYS is actually a family of some aerial radars that were created by the Soviet Union. Basically, they were designed for detection of aircraft and also ships, and the predecessor to the one we have, the 5M, had a distance of 0.5 kilometers, so basically 500 meters. Not great in general. The thing is, or the main thing about this is it could be used for blind navigation and could also use radio navigation beacons up to 90 kilometers away. And this was actually ordered in 1945, and then it was, 1944, and then it was actually put into order and used on the 19th of April 1945. It was admitted to the VVS of the Naval Forces, and in the same year it was manufactured in large numbers. So the one that we're getting, the 5S, is the later version of the 5M. I'm sure it will have some better stuff on it. It was actually used on A-20Gs. Weirdly enough, or at least the 5M version was. The Hokwim PF5, the frigate that we talked about last time, has been hidden now, so therefore it's no longer you'll have access to. My guess this means that this thing will either be a event vehicle in the future, it might be a GE vehicle like a premium, or it might just be in the tech tree for the next update. Maybe they've just decided that it's not going to be in this one. The full model is ready for it, as we saw, so maybe it'll even be for maybe an upcoming Build-A-Bear event, which may be coming pretty soon. Then we have the TU1 itself, so they added some new Tier 1 23mm belts to it, and also some 12.7mm belts in rank 3 and rank 4 of the mods, but understand that because it's a premium you get all these for free anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. It just means that you get more ammunition belts for the vehicle. The 12mm of armor on it has been upgraded to 65mm of glass, and the 50mm armor areas have been also gone up to 65mm of glass. There's also some other armor changes on the vehicle, and it got access to this radar, so this vehicle is going to get a lot more beefy compared to what it was before, and also get a proper functioning radar instead of a half-job one, which is what we saw on the dev server. We also have some new text, but most of them are just letters like A, B, C, D, F, G and stuff like that. But we also have protection map, consider camera vertical angle, save direction while switching current trigger, band, and also signal, pulse, pulse Doppler, and CW. So once again, doing more radar changes. One of the huge things that we've seen when it comes to War Thunder over the last few years is their improvement on their radar systems, and they just continue to be that, and in that case. The next set is some text changes once again, where max range has been changed to just range, max search zone has been changed to search zone, and then 12-inch extended range HE Pat 1928 has lost the extended range part of it, where weapon lock range is now just lock range, and then radar, SARH, and radar, ARH. All aspects is now all aspects with a lowercase a, and rear aspect is rear aspect with a lowercase a. So they're just changing some of the files, maybe to make things a little bit easier and to plan for the future. Now, the interesting part there is obviously the radar stuff, SARH and ARH. So what is SARH? Semi-active radar homing. So, you know, the missiles such as like the AIM-7s that we have in game, those are the semi-active radar homing missiles. The ARH, though, is something we haven't seen in the game yet, and also something to be quite terrified of. That is one of the types of missile that I will be amazed if we see in the upcoming year or so. Maybe it'll come in the future. But basically, active radar homing is a missile guidance method in which the missile contains a radar transceiver and the electronics necessary for it to find and track its targets autonomously. So basically, a fire and forget, basically a long-range missile is the way to put it. Obviously, the brevity code for NATO for launching them is Fox 3. We don't have any examples of these in the game right now, but just basically, you lock onto a target with your radar, you fire this missile, and then the missile itself tracks the target instead of having to respond with your radar from your plane. So it's, in effect, a lot of these missiles are fire and forget missiles which are guided by their own radar. That's basically how it goes. These are incredibly deadly and incredibly dangerous, and one of the things that we don't have in the game yet, but would be one of the next steps in technology when it comes to the air forces. It's also something which is found on many different countries. The most popular one that you've probably heard of is the AIM-120 AMRAAM, but there's also stuff like the AIM-54 Phoenix from the US. Even you have one from South Africa, the R-Data, which is about. Obviously, the Russians have many examples of these things, and also there's a few European ones as well, such as one used by the UK and also France, the Perseus missile, and China also dips their little bit into these things. So yeah, it's that would be a huge step whenever that happens. Obviously, we're still getting some of the better semi-active radar homing missiles with the Sky Flashes being added this update, and also the AIM-7E2s. So I think the active radar homing missiles are a little bit of a ways off, but it will be a game changer once they're added, if they are added at any point. They've also done a new folder. All the new folders received their icons, so it'll be a little bit easier to track them. The A4E, the icons on the loadout screen have also changed, and they are doing slight changes to the British Apache, the AH Mark I. It's getting 30 countermeasures instead of 24, so this just means that it'll have access to a little bit more flares or chaff depending on what you decide to pick. It's also got a bunch of new loadouts which basically correspond to what we've seen with other helicopters, where they are adding the air-to-airs to the loadouts instead of just having them separately. So the secondary armaments now actually have star streaks in them, and also there is a new one with the 76 M247 rockets and the countermeasures as well. All the rest are just the standard loadouts with the star streaks and the countermeasures. The F4EJ Kai, the AIM-7E2 that it has on it, has now been changed to the Dogfight AIM-7E2. From my understanding of how the AIM-7E2 works, I believe the way it works is that it has like 2 modes. So you have like the dogfighting mode for it, and then you have like the standard mode for it. And obviously the dogfighting mode is designed more for dogfighting. We're going to have to see how this actually affects the missile in game, and what happens with this different mode if they decide to give it both modes, or if they decide just to give it one, which will suit the game more, which is obviously the dogfighting one, because the meta is very closed in and bang, 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 get close to each other and smash each other in the face. The F5E, they've re-added the laser designator for it, and also the MFD HUD color has been changed on it. The F8E, they've done some DM changes, the DM changes of the previous update have been reverted on it, so it's back to its previous version, and the 1 second burst mass of the IL-28SH has been improved by 0.01 kilograms per second, so watch out. Massive on that thing. The J37C, the thrust reverse is now only available when the gear touches the ground, and this makes sense. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that the gear has to be at least out for it to be used, and now it can only be used in game when you are landed and on the ground. The wing break-off points have also been changed on the J37C. I didn't have too many issues with it. I thought it was in a much better state than when the Draken was first introduced on the dev server, when it just flipped around and broke everything as it was going. I wonder if they've made it better or worse. We'll have to see. And then when it comes to the GR1, they've actually changed some of its effects. So basically, they've made it so the vehicle itself has a slightly higher repair cost in arcade and also in simulator, but across the board for their rank 1 to rank 4 modifications, they have actually lowered the repair cost coefficient, and also the GE has been lowered for those mods, apart from rank 1 where it's been increased. This is probably because they actually just removed the countermeasures from it again, as we talked about before. So the GR1, the Jaguar for the British, is not getting countermeasures this update. The Jaguar A for the French, though, is. So that's kind of at least a nice thing. Then they've actually increased the amount of ammo the Berezins have on the TU1, and not all of the roof machine guns were changed in the last update. Some more changes were here as well. So the horizontal rotation speed is going from 30, 40, 50 to 90 degrees per second. So that's going to be a hell of a lot faster. And then the elevation speed is going from 20 to 90 degrees per second as well. Once again, incredibly fast. They've done a ton of little armor changes here and there. So the M18s, they get 5mm of added armor, 3 little pieces of it. The M19s are the same, where they've added 12.7mm of armor and lots of add-on steel structure. The M48A1, the coaxial machine gun, moved faster than the turret, and this was actually fixed. That's kind of odd how the coaxial probably got itself out of place while it was moving around because of its speed. The ammo selection has been disabled for the 12.7mm on the M60A3, which sucks. The Jagdpanzer IV has got 20mm more armor. The Saddam, they've changed the shell ejection on it, and now the STRV-1030 it's looking like it might be a GE premium, so it's no longer hidden. Obviously, it was a pre-order vehicle for the Swedish back in the day, and now it might be coming back as a GE premium. And then once again, they brought back the PF5 in this update, so it's been moved after the PT810, and it's now down to 3.7. It's got its depth charges reduced from 40 to 8 because so many people use them. Some of the sailors were using officer models, now they're just using standard ones, and the ammo selection has been disabled for the 20mm. So it might actually be that the PF5 could make it into this update after all. The Wyoming BB-32, its max speed was increased by 5 kilometers. The Montgomery is no longer hidden. Remember about the British ships that they are removing the starter premium for the British, for the blue water stuff, and also the reserve. So if you are interested in those vehicles, before they remove them, it might be worth purchasing them so you can keep them forever instead of losing them to the pit of time. In the Southampton, they've added a 9.53mm and 6.35mm armor to the Citadel. The Vega, they've increased the depth charged ammo by 2. Same with the Verdun, since it's very similar to the Vega. Those are the new those are the new vehicles that are coming in as a reserve for Britain, and also the new starter premium, the 250 GU one. The Aoba, they've changed it a little bit as well. It seems like naval forces get the most changes when it comes to these things. The Aviary, they've made their torpedoes a lot worse, so the range has gone down from 9,000 to 6,000, and the speed from 29 to 18 meters per second, so rip those torpedoes. They've changed the penetration of the HJ73E from 900 to 800 millimeters, so it's not going to change it that much. The 9M133 and also the FM variant, they have added a new line, which is Rotation Rocket X, so it should actually swivel now, and they've also added a tracer to the tail of the missile, so you'll be able to track it as it goes along. The AIM-7E2 standard mode has been removed, and the dogfight mode remains, so maybe they're just going to go with one mode for the machine. My guess is they'll still go with the 2 once they've sorted it out. And then the Skyflash, they've actually added the dogfight mode to that thing, so we'll have to see how that pans out. Unfortunately, when it came to these new semi-active radar homing missiles, they weren't really in a fit state on the dev servers to really show their capabilities, so we might have to actually wait for live to see what they're capable of doing, and that, leaves a bad taste in the mouth, but at the same time, it's been standard practice in War Thunder for a very long time. They've also added the image for this year's Tankers Day decal, which looks pretty cool. It's basically just a car with a 90 next to it, and then a tank figure with a 70 underneath it. Looks very simple. Tankers Day is an annual event that we have when it comes to War Thunder. It's something which gets done all the time, and guess what? It happens on the 12th of September. So it'll probably be, this coming weekend that we have Tankers Day, so look forward to a mini event for that. They've also got a bunch of unused air assets, so you've got the US 6.5-inch ATAR, which is just kind of sat there, which is of course a rocket, which is sat around the place. It was used by the United States Navy during the Korean War, and it wasn't used for that long, but they basically put it in service from 1950 to 1954. It was fitted on Shooting Stars, F-51 Mustangs, which we don't have in game, and then also the Corsairs. So this might just be a new loadout for the Corsairs in the future. We obviously have the US GBU-38, the guided bomb unit, which we talked about before, or the JDAM, as you may know it. That is, I think, something that'll come in future updates. Obviously, they're going to test it on the MiG-27M, not the damn MiG-17, the MiG-27M. So we'll have to see how it does in that regard, and then the JDAMs will be added to future vehicles, since I don't think there's an existing vehicle in game that we have which could carry them, at least at the moment. There's also the JP Mark 82, which is obviously the Japanese Mark 82 US bomb, and then the JM117, so the same deal but for the M117. The AJ37, there are several instrument textures. Now, if you don't know what the AJ37, because the one that we're getting in-game is the JA37, the AJ37 is slightly different. Basically, it's like the attacker variant of the vehicle, so it has a total of 7 hard points. It could carry a bunch of different stuff, such as rockets, air-to-surface missiles as well, like RBS-15s, anti-ship missiles. It could carry Mavericks on the thing. It could also have 30mm weapons pods. It's basically a strike aircraft or strike fighter version of the Viggen, whereas the one that we're getting in game is the air superiority version, which we're getting the JA-37C, I believe, with the countermeasures. So yeah, the AJ would be the earlier version, which was more primarily designed for ground attack. I'm sure at some point that will come to the game, kind of like how we have the MiG-23 and then the MiG-27. I'm sure we'll have the JA and the AJ to follow suit. Also the T-90M tracks, as we talked about before. The T-90M is a vehicle that will eventually come to the game at some point, and then there's a bunch of unused naval stuff as well. So the first one is some turret textures for some 40mm 70 Breda Type 106 turrets. These are found on the Hamburg class destroyer. Now, the Hamburg, there's actually two types of it, but one of them's a cruiser and one of them's a destroyer. So the cruiser, the SMS Hamburg, is actually one of those really early 1900s cruisers, and it was used until 1931. It was out of service in 1944, obviously used kind of during World War II, and then scrapped in 1956. But that is not the machine we're talking about, since it's a light cruiser. The Type 101 Hamburg is a more modern class destroyer, which is made, by the Germans, which is made actually in 1960, and it was one of the home-built Bundesmarines destroyers that was around. It follows a similar look at compared to a bunch of other machines that we see around the time. So it had access to 3 single 100mm turrets, the L-55s, then also 4 dual 40mm. You also have some anti-ship missiles, if they want to add that in, hopefully not, and then obviously a bunch of other stuff as well, including rocket launchers, and then you could have access to a bunch of other stuff on the machine, which could be pretty devastating. So maybe that will be in the future when they add anti-ship missiles or other ammunition or munitions choices. The next one's the Congo. I'm pretty sure this one's been in for ages, sat in the files. It's the 356mm Type 41 early turret textures. So the Congo class battlecruiser, if you don't know what that is, it's a battlecruiser which was used or built during the First World War for Japan, and it was used into the Second World War as well. They completed 4 of them. They lost all 4 of them. It was a very sad fate for these machines in general. You had the Congo itself, which in 1944 was torpedoed and sunk by a U.S. submarine, the Sea Lion. The Hei was lost during the Battle of Guadalcanal in 1942. The Kirishima followed the same fate, and the Haruna was sunk by U.S. aircraft in 1945 and then broken up in 1946. So none of these machines survived. Also, they had some pretty crazy armament on them. So as it was built, it had 4 twin 356mm guns, 16 single 152mm, 4 single 76s, and also 8 torpedo tubes. But by 1945, obviously the Haruna, since all the rest had been destroyed by then, it got access to some slightly different setups, because obviously, once again, Japan realized that planes were a threat. Now, just remember, this thing was sunk by aerial strike, so aircraft, right? Now, look at the AA this thing had. So it still had the 4 twin 356mm, it had the 8 single 152s, then the 6 twin 127mm, and then it had 118 Type 96 25mm AA guns. Still sank by aircraft, by the way. 118 25mm. It also had access to some depth charges, so it lost its torpedoes, gained a ton of AA guns, and still got sunk by planes. So that's pretty much where the vehicle is. It also did gain a catapult in the 45 variant. My feeling is with that machine, we'll probably get the early version first. Then you've got the San Giorgio, or Giorgio, depending on how you want to say it. This is an armored cruiser, and in the files what you have is actually the torpedo tube textures, weirdly enough. It's an armored cruiser from Italy, which was built in the early 1900s once again, and in service from 1910 to 1943. There was 2 of them completed, one was scrapped, one was lost, and the main armament of these was 2 twin 254mm, 4 twin 190s, 18 single 76s, 2 single 47s, and then some torpedo tubes as well on top of that. These very much look like a early 1900 armored cruiser, so very bulky in the center, still very wide, kind of like the dreadnoughts you see in game right now. And the fate of the San Giorgio, which we're looking at, it was scuttled in 1941, salvaged, but then sank under tow in 1952, and then the San Marco was actually scrapped in 1949 after being sunk in 1945. So a very unfortunate look. Then you've also got the Littorio class battleship and various aircraft carriers, which used the Gagnotti Bergiaci catapult texture. So this is once again one of those things which is only prevalent on these machines themselves. The Littorio class battleship is once again an Italian machine, set of battleships which were built from 1934 to 1942. They were in service from 1940 to 1948. There was 4 of them planned, 3 which were actually completed, 1 cancelled, and then 1 lost. So very varying statistics there when it comes to the battleship. It had access to 9 381mm guns, 12 152s, 12 90s, 20 37mm, and 16 dual sets of 20mm Berettas. Then also it had 4 4.7-inch guns, which used star shells, so basically the ones which would light up so they could see what they were firing at. 280mm belt, which is okay, not the best, not the worst. But yeah, it's another Italian battleship, something that they are missing. Obviously, we got the Alleglieri recently, but it would be nice to see more. Then there's 2 maps. You've got the Africa Oil Rig and the AMZ Textile Factory. So in the future, in the new updates, they're probably going to be adding more and more and more maps, especially for ground forces. We see 2 new maps for ground forces in this update coming up, and also a returning air map, which is pretty cool. That's all the stuff from the Datamine. There's quite a lot of decent things here to have a chat about and have a think about. Remember, when it comes to Datamines, that not everything is set in stone, not all of this stuff could come to the live server, probably only half of it will, but it's at least good for discussion. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.